Greetings, Warlords. Welcome to Saga Thursday, the show all about the skirmish miniatures game from Studio Tomahawk. I'm your host, Rodge, joined today by Brit. How's it going, Brit?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. How are you, Rodge?
Good. Yeah, so we're getting together, we're having a little chat, and this is a fun one here. So I wanted to get you on because you recently, well, we're recording this in September, but it'll probably be a little while before it comes out. But you recently fired up the Strategicon of Saga podcast. Is that the correct name of it?
Yeah, the Strategicon of Saga. So long story short, it's based off of the Strategicon written by Maurice, the Byzantines.
Okay.
Yep, so it was written in like the 6th century. And actually, if you see Ragnar's notes on the Last Romans, he jokes about how they love their manuals. So that's kind of where it came from. That was kind of the idea. So
yeah, I think I've heard that referenced in different historical podcasts I've listened to, the Strategicon. So we're having you on. We're going to talk about being a newer player in Saga. So you've already played your first game, but where do you go from here? So this is topic that you wanted to chat about, and I think it's a good one. Monty and I have hit different newbie, beginner beginner Saga topics, but this is the kind of thing you might discuss on the podcast. Actually, I would say so far it's been more of a cerebral topics, not dedicated to one particular faction, so it's good to listen to. It's been different from the other ones out there, Saga Ohio, the activation phase, and myself, where we, the easiest source material is just to pick a faction and chat about it. So I'm sure at some point you guys will be up to that. But so far in your run, it's just been kind of general Saga chat, which I think is really great. What was the inspiration for getting the podcast started, and at least so far, kind of doing these kind of different Saga topics?
Yeah. So I will say for me, and this is maybe kind of giving some of my background, right? As I've never done like tabletop wargaming. And so I've been friends with Stephen Holdeman and Luke Starnes, who are two big players down here. I've known them since we were teenagers, and they got into Saga right in the beginning. And I've always kind of known that they really like this game. And so I got into it about a year and a half ago. Really kind of cold, right? I have like a lot of like kind of other nerdy hobbies that I really enjoy, but I've never dived all the way in.
Wow, that's cool. So getting into actually models and painting, that's a pretty big hurdle that some people, a lot of people are interested, but when the rubber hits the road, that's something that will kill it for a lot of people. So was this like your first time painting models and stuff?
It was actually like assembly, painting. I've never like really done painting at all. I have a lot of other like kind of hobbies I really enjoy, but never miniature building, painting, never done it. So,
okay. So how do you find it? Do you enjoy it? The hobby side of it?
I actually do. I will say there's a lot of stuff, and this even speaks to why I named the podcast. I love history, right? History is something that's always been a side hobby. I almost majored in it in college, and well, unfortunately, there's only a couple of directions to go when you get a major in history, and I was like, let's do something else. But I've always loved it. And so this kind of itched that need, and it gave me a way to explore, right? I can look through all the books and find all the stuff, and then you get to put them on the table, but you aren't playing a perfect, right? It's just like you have the warbands and the way the abilities play. You can kind of get really close to the way those warbands actually fought in real life. But just in a little bit different way. So like that's like perfect.
It's like the legend of the battle. We're not playing the battle as it happened. We're playing the legend that the one guy who survived, he's a grandfather now, talking to his grandkids around the fire, and the battle that we're playing is the battle that he's describing to the kids. So that's kind of how I think about it. So that's awesome. Yeah, always great to have newer hobby guys in. So let's kind of jump in. We do have a rough outline here, but we'll probably be all over the place. So you played your first game of Saga, Brit. Did you win that game? Or did you lose that game?
I will say I played against, he was on the podcast, one of my friends, Luke Starnes here. He's been playing since this game came out, right? Him and Steve Holdeman are really good friends. And they've been playing, I mean, at this point, a decade now. And I played Vikings. I think it's kind of like we always talk we played Vikings. He played Anglo-Saxons. It was just a wash. I mean, it was a wash of a game. I was just kind of like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And it was a pretty bad blowout. I think I probably lost my first, I don't think I got a win for the first like 7-8 games.
Okay.
It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough run.
That's not bad. You're up against an experienced crew there, but you stuck with it, and I guess you're kind of determined to stick with it. You must have been having fun while you were getting those losses in still, I imagine.
Yeah, I will say this is, like I said, I walked into the Kansas City crew here, and there's about 8, almost 10 of us now. I think we're kind of building our small little group. We're kind of running some good stuff down here. But honestly, it's just like the ability to have that conversation, to kind of catch up with old friends, right? I hadn't seen Stephen Holdeman probably like in a real sense in probably about 10 years. Ooh. And so like catching up with him.
I've seen him more than that, Brit.
Yep. And so now I'll say I've seen him a ton. When we were teenagers, we hung out quite a bit. And then through like early 20s, and I kind of left to kind of travel around and came back to Kansas City. And caught up with our mutual friend Luke Starnes, and he was always kind of trying to get me sold on Saga for probably about a year. And then I finally came out, watched a game, and then played a game the next week. And at this point, I think I own 8 Warbands. All the books. Now I have a podcast. It's a whole thing.
So don't kick yourself too much. It took, I had to go through 2 demos. The guys have been ragging on me for a year, the Twin City folks, to play Saga. So it did take about 3 or 4 years of constant nagging before I was like, okay, I'll play it. Okay. So from here on out, I think there's two paths for a Saga player. So one is you can just continue to play, just have fun, and a lot of players just go that route. I think Saga is a great secondary game. Once you know the rules, you don't have to, you can pick it up every 3 to 6 months, play a game. You don't have to dive into the rule book. Most of the stuff is from memory. You don't have to think of an army list ahead of time. So you can go super casual route, but we're going to go a different path. And so you play Saga, you play guys that are pretty darn good, and you want to get better at playing Saga. So that's the journey I think you'll lead us on today. Do you think that's an accurate assessment?
Very much so, right? Like I love competitive play in that sense, but I also really enjoy just the game, right? I love sitting around for a couple hours, doing some history talk, but also being extremely competitive. And then I play with a crew that is very competitive. And so I had to either kind of like that, either just play every once in a while or kind of dive in if I'm going to win a game. So I chose to dive all the way in.
Okay, sounds good. So you're after your 6th or 7th loss here, reeling. What actions have you taken here to go from the beginner to get up to intermediate level? So I'll toss it to you.
So I will say for me, and this is where I kind of, whenever I even have guys who maybe kind of stop by on the hobby stores we're playing, they're like, what do I do? How do I get into this? This looks fun. Or maybe I play Saga casually. And I always kind of go back to, for me, my intro was watching your videos, right? As I played every week, maybe every 2 weeks, and getting one game in every couple weeks can be kind of hard. And so what I would do is at home, I'd actually put on like Saga Thursday and the like how-to. And I had the TV down here and just put that how-to video on and had my miniatures on the table and kind of just ran them through the paces just to really get through the nuance of the rules. Like the rule book is pretty straightforward, but then every warband interacts with those rules and each other in ways that the rule book, it doesn't directly reach out to you. And so that was like a big piece for me, was just kind of getting some like at-home reps. Was just putting on like videos of a faction review or like any of the other podcasts that are out there, some of the YouTube channels that are out there. I would just kind of have their content playing in the background as I'm painting or practicing. And that was something that really helped get my mind frame into the universe of Saga.
Sure. Well, that's good to hear. The Saga Thursday helped you out. Of course, that's the answer to any question or problem. In my experience, just check out Saga Thursday. The answers will be within. But yeah, so there's me. We mentioned Activation Phase, Saga Ohio. There's still Northern Tempest podcast. They're a little more historical and frequent. There's Graham's Wargaming Vault. Do you watch that one?
I do. I say, and this is, and we'll kind of probably touch on some of this stuff, is that the way to digest some of this content, but we'll probably kind of get there as we kind of go through some of the stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I definitely watched a lot of that stuff.
So you're kind of getting gleaning some knowledge through osmosis there, learning some of the terms and stuff that we keep talking about. Okay. What else besides that stuff can somebody do to try to get better at the game?
Yep, and this is where maybe I'll kind of even plug my own podcast, right? So as we talk about that beginner to intermediate, and that's kind of the point I will say where my podcast, the reason I created it, was that I've watched a lot of this content, and you kind of pull a lot of it in, and all of these little questions I have, the answers are in a lot of content, right? So you did have one where you did a terrain review, you did some of these ones. But as you go through the faction reviews, I hear these little tidbits, and I'm like, I want to know more about that question. I want to know more, like, kind of just give me more information and have kind of a free conversation about some of that stuff. Because, like, when you get on, like, the Discord, right, the Saga Thursday Discord, I like a lot of the answers, but sometimes I want to write out 2 pages and have somebody answer me in 2 pages. And that's not the most feasible. And so that's kind of the aim of my podcast on Strategicana Saga, is the idea that we're going to just kind of roll with like a single topic. We did terrain to start with. We've done one where we call kind of lose 10 games is a big thing that's down here, right? That you start a new warband.
Did Steven come up with that?
He did. That is
okay. It just sounded like something that he would come up with. And I don't think it was specifically said in there, but it sounded like an idea that he would have.
Yep. That is a big, and I will say, and that's why I shared in the podcast, for me, that was luckily, and this is where I share, very luckily, I, being new to wargaming, have a group that is extremely advanced in wargaming, right? We have Charles Yaw, Stephen Hollowell. They're both big, like, Flames of War guys. Like, some of them tried out some bolt action stuff. Like, they come from all these different universes, like Warhammer. And so they bring all of this experience, and I luckily get to walk right into that. And I know some guys don't. And so when I have these questions, and that's kind of also the other reason for the podcast, was I'm lucky to have these guys, and I want to share this information that sometimes in those videos, I want more. I want more of, like, tell me why you did what you did with that terrain for that warband. Tell me what you did with this for that. Yeah. Sure. And so that's kind of the idea behind the Strategicana Saga podcast, is to have really a longer open discussion, just kind of about general topics.
Yeah, that sounds good. And yeah, the ones I've listened to so far have a nice conversational tone. Sounds like we're all in the car on the way back or to an event. Just kind of doing big plans or, damage assessment afterwards. So I definitely get that kind of vibe from everything. So what would you say we should jump to next here on your little bullet point chart?
Yeah, so I like the kind of the next one, which really is just kind of what's a good place to start for, and that kind of continues the conversation. I will say for a lot of newer players, having like a journal, right? Funny enough, I can't find mine. I have one that's like a Linden's Farm Gospels looking
somebody
journal.
Grabbed it. They've got your secrets now, Brit.
They probably do somewhere. They're learning all of my year and a half's worth of knowledge in there. But I like write down those weird interactions where we kind of go through, and I'll say as I'm going through a game, and this is something I can't maybe ask, and I'll say this, like, I'm playing a competitive game against somebody. I can't ask them why they put that piece of terrain down the way they did, right? How are they thinking about that long term? So I'll write that down, right? Or if there's a weird rules interaction, and maybe as a newer player, I have a senior player in front of me who already knows this rule. I'm still going to write that down so I can go home, and I'm reading. I probably read the rule book every single game I played for 6-8 months just straight, because there's so many little nuances.
That's a great idea, actually. So, and I have seen other players using a journal, recording stuff. So it's not just you, but having those specific questions, because once the battle gets going, you're not going to be able to you'll remember it next week, the middle of the night. It'll drive you awake. The swamp, why? But having those questions and then to be able to discuss it with your opponent afterwards. So, do you have we have these specific questions. I know I do have a couple of questions that I would ask my opponent after the game, but do you have questions that you would ask your opponent after the game to kind of glean some knowledge?
This is usually in the game. I will say it depends on some of the players I play. Some players, they do a great breakdown. I think it's kind of knowing your opponents, knowing your friends. Sometimes I'm just playing with friends, and when we're done, we don't do a tactical breakdown. I think some of the guys, I'll go, hey, after this, can we maybe stick around for 20, 30 minutes and talk about this? Can I ask you some questions? Or we'll sit down and kind of have a drink after the game, and we just talk about it, right? And so I will say for me, I guess it always goes back to maybe who am I playing and how much time I have. I say I kind of have that husband hobby time, after like a 3-hour vacation away from the house to go play some Saga. I kind of want to run back but it goes back to that, is that the idea is that I am looking for like, hey, when this interaction happened, what do you think could have helped there, right? When I maybe didn't move that unit up far enough, or maybe I didn't kind of get my guys here. What are your thoughts on that? And that's been really, really helpful for me along the path.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a good start. I can think of 2 things I would add to that. So especially if you thought they were going to do something and they didn't do it, you were preparing everything for a charge or something like that. You thought they were coming in for sure, and then they didn't. I think something like that would be a good question to go over. And their answer might be, well, I saw that you were preparing for that charge, so I didn't want to do it. The other good question you can ask, and I think you can always ask this, and especially even at tournaments and stuff, there's always some time when you're picking up your models and the score sheets are getting filled out. But you can ask them, what were you afraid of that I didn't do? So I think that's a good one there, because we play different boards, and with the board you're playing, you always feel it's not good enough. Nothing seems to work. The other guy's board is amazing. All this stuff seems to work. And then he's thinking the same thing. So, just to put the boards in perspective, no matter what you're up against, they're always worried about something. And I think trying to, especially a veteran will know kind of what the danger can come from. So trying to pick their brain and get an answer to that, I think could be good. I think most people would probably give you an honest response there. What do you think, Brett?
I like that. That's a really good idea. I'd say in a kind of roundabout way, sometimes that's kind of the questions that are really, really helpful, is that just like, what do you think of like my gameplay or like that? I really like that question of like, what were you afraid of? Because like I said, if you're playing somebody that's maybe played your board before and they're like, no, I knew that this is kind of the thing to watch out for. Maybe I didn't even see that, right? I think about maybe this is like the 3rd or 4th time I play this warband and I didn't see that nuance to this warband. I like that question. It's really, really good.
Yeah, so there's probably, gives you something to chew on immediately and get it going for the next event or game at the event there. So do you recommend going to events to get better at the game of Saga, Brit?
I very much
That's
do.
Controversial. I don't know. Taking a stand like that, you're mighty brave.
I would say, as somebody who's, I joke about it on my podcast, it's my time coming up to Adepticon. I went a nice 0-3 on day 1 with my favorite warband, and just got smoked. So it was but it was a huge learning experience. It was, plus meeting other guys, right? I have this like core group of guys here at the time, like there was like 6 to 8 of us, and coming up to Adepticon, or I've now run my own tournaments. It was super fun to see the community. I think that was probably for me what energized me to keep playing, was seeing how like just kind of diehard this community really is. It's like the guys that play Saga that like it, they love it. And so It's really cool to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So events, great way to get games in quickly. That's the main part. I mean, there's camaraderie. You're going to learn a lot, but playing games sequentially and being able to immediately apply what you learned from the last battle is incredibly helpful. And you could play, a game once a month for an entire year, but I bet you'd learn more about playing the game in just one day 3-game event. What do you think of that?
That's huge. I would say, yeah, like even Adepticon, I mean, that's what, 4 days. I did all 4 days. I mean, that's 12.
Ooh, baby.
Yeah, it's 12 games
12
in
games.
a weekend. And I was like, 8 months into playing the game at that point? 9 months? Maybe I was like just under a year. I think I was just under a year. I barely got 3 warbands put together to play those 3 for the weekend and just went. And it was huge. It was a huge learning experience. And meeting and seeing the way other guys play the game, right? That we get stuck in our little group here. And then we go up there and see guys coming in from all these different areas. And it's a huge learning experience.
So that's interesting. You had less than a year, but you went whole hog. You had to build the warbands. Do you have any anxiety about those games and not? I mean, you probably didn't know what you would be up against most of the time, or you probably listened to a bunch of faction reviews and stuff. But
I did. That was another piece that I recommend to any new player. I just put faction reviews on the background, especially if I'm building a warband. So, like, say I'm building them. I started with Vikings, transferred most of those guys into Anglo-Saxons, and I just really like the Anglo-Saxons. So I just played all of like your Age of Vikings, like all the podcasts that have them that do faction reviews. I would just play all of those Age of Vikings, so I could how do these other warbands play? What's their style? How would I interrupt them with my style, right? How do I gain tempo in this game to kind of steal that back to me, right? We're going to play the game I want to play on this board with my warband, and I know at least enough about yours to know this warband likes to do this. This warband kind of is maybe a shootier faction that's static, so I need to get over there and get in your face, or I can go grab the objectives and just make you attempt to chase me. So knowing those little nuances, I might not know how to play the board, but I know enough about that board to at least understand its gameplay.
So I think, too, maybe as a newer player, you might feel like you have to know everything up front and have to know the other guy's boards, have the guy's board sitting there and be analyzing it. But I guess kind of what I do at a tournament or something, I'm going to put in some more effort. But if it's just a casual game, I'm not even going to put their board up next to my board. I'm just going to push it forward and just kind of see what happens, see their combos. I'm going to do the thing I would normally do, and if I get burned, it's going to really cement that lesson. And so that's how I go about playing against new warbands for the first time. Just let them, do what they're going to do, and just kind of experience it that way, rather than try to overanalyze up front. I just don't know if that's good use of time or your mental energy. Just try to do your game and let them do theirs. And once you have that first game under your belt, then you can break out their board and dig in. What do you think of that? What's your approach?
I would say for me, that's exactly my approach. When I'm here playing casually with the guys, if I got a new warband, I might not even put your board on the table, right? I'm going to do that. I'm here to learn my warband. Right, you're here to learn yours. If, like you said, at a competition, whole different ball game, right? At that point, I am going to overanalyze. I am going to think about all that stuff. But
hope you didn't want snack, buddy. This one's gone to the full time.
Yep. No in between round breaks. We're just going. But that's where I say like that. That's kind of the same way I approach it, is that I'm here to learn my warband. How do they move? How do they get into terrain? How do they shoot, right? Whatever this warband looks like it's meant to do, I need to practice that really just kind of under fire and just go. And that's sometimes hard because we want to win, right? And that's where I think the episode we put out is that the idea is, don't worry so much about winning in the beginning. Worry about learning your board. At the competition, that's when you can worry about winning. Unless, like for me, I played 2 games with my Macedonians before I brought them up there, and well, that's just how it goes. That's kind of a different day. But that's the same approach I use: is do your thing regardless of what they're doing, and don't worry about winning, because right now, learn your warband. The win will show up. I promise you, it'll show up.
Sure. Yeah. And just kind of think about that more. You can kind of break it down almost into, maybe A third of your skill is just Saga basics, mechanics, knowing when to over-activate a unit, knowing when to use fatigues, leave fatigues, and kind of getting the basics of that. And the other third might be learning your own board and learning all the tips and tricks and everything you can do there. And then the last third is knowing the other guy's board. And so the first 2/3, you can control that, and it's probably what you want to focus on immediately, because that last third it's just going to take a lot of time, because every game is probably going to be against a different board, and there's like, I don't know how many, 75 factions, whatever we're up to currently, depending on what you want to include and what you don't. So, I agree. Just concentrate on your own stuff. And I think that'd be the quickest way to get to that intermediate level.
Yep.
Now, looking at kind of our outline here. So I like this note here about trying irregular moves. You want to speak a little bit on that?
Yeah. So I'll kind of talk about it first, and I'll give a fun example. As I think about the idea, when I watch the guys that I play up here, they're so good at the basics. And when I watch them kind of get into that round 4, 5, or 6, and they're now hunting for the win, right? They're looking at the conditions of this game. All of a sudden, they kind of do these like really, like, I mean, the irregular move. Like, they're these very out of character moves that you look at and you're like, that is like the dumbest thing anybody could do, but it wins them the game, right? It's like what this like just kind of ridiculous, like you wouldn't expect to do it, right? It's not standard Saga stuff that just like, I've practiced this a bunch, it doesn't make sense to do it, and so I've stayed away from it the whole time, right? Because it doesn't make sense. Why would I put and the example I like to use is I was playing a player here, Charles. We were playing in our season, and I was playing Byzantines, and he was playing the Crusaders, and he had his whole warband pretty much in terrain. And at that point, I kind of shifted my mindset. So, you know what? I'm going to kind of just learn some stuff from this game, right? I hate to say I've looked at this game and I'm not punching for the top of the season anymore. I'm maybe not, but you know what I am punching for? I'm punching for massacre points. So at this point, let's try some really wild stuff. And I double activated a unit of cavalry to charge into rocky grounds. Or not rocky grounds. It was ruins, right? Like the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Right. But it's learning how to do something like that, because say if that was the game, right? Maybe I needed 2 more points to win this game. I've now known, okay, I've done it before, right? I've taken this unit of cavalry, which should never go into a ruins, right? Like I double activate them, so they're coming in with a fatigue, then they gain another fatigue going in, and they are just, I know they're going to get wiped, but I need those 2 points. And so in that moment, it really became like a learning lesson for me to try to, in a regular move, to close out a game, right? Maybe I needed the massacre points because I was fighting for massacre points in our season. And so I kind of shifted my mindset, but it was also a learning moment, right? I might need this down the road of how does this terrain interact? I know it's terrible on paper, but how does it happen in real life?
Sure. Yeah, it's a little different once you got your 8 or 12 attack dice, you're rolling, kind of seeing the consequences, and you might find, oh, this actually worked out pretty good, or this is horrible. I'm never going to do this again.
But I've seen it, right? I've seen it that it is horrible. I can look at the book and go, yes, it's not good, but I really know it's not good.
And I think that really kind of ties in with the basics too. To win a game of Saga, you'll probably have to activate a unit more than once during its turn and get the fatigue. So when is it worth it to spend the dice and to incur that penalty upon yourself? And, sometimes you just got to do it. And that's, on top tables, you just go for it. That's something that will happen. So I like that idea. It's kind of like the stress test, having a good mindset about it. I'm just going to push these in. I went to Saga Storm recently, and in one game I used Ligurians. They're a fun merc unit, and you know what? I'm just going to. I told Sky, I'm just going to put these guys up front. I'm just going to move them up. Just want to see, if it's good, if it's not, if I like it or don't, just see what happens. And then it was the same thing with the elephant. So I was planning to run some war chariots. Didn't work out, but Scott loaned me an elephant, and I was just played 5-6 games just trying to see what the elephant could do. And I like, tell you what, I like that elephant. I think balancing all those different rules was an amazing feat, but I think it's a balanced unit, that elephant, after playing all those games. So with everything going on, yeah, my head's off to Studio Tomahawk for that elephant. But so stuff like that. So I would do dumb stuff with the elephant, and usually when you do that, you can tell your opponent that, so you feel, they don't think you're a crazy man.
Yep.
I'm just gonna see what happens, and then usually they're like, "Oh yeah, bring it," But a couple of situations worked out pretty good. They didn't want me to bring it after they saw what was brought. So I think that's great. There's theories. Let's test it out. All right.
And
yeah.
Yep. As a new player, to me that's it, right? Test the boundaries, test the limits. It's gonna only work to your advantage later on, right? When I play the game now 5 games down, I know how to do stuff like that. So yep.
Definitely. It's not in our notes really, but what is your thoughts on scenarios as far as playing different missions and stuff? How does that tie in with what we've been talking about?
Yeah. So as a beginner, it can be a really challenging place. And we kind of talk about this on my podcast. So down here in Kansas City, everybody loves, there's a couple guys. We love Clash, right? I love just getting on the board and just let's get into a boxing match and see who kind of loses first. But scenarios are such a great way. Again, it goes back to Irregular Moves, right? I think about the scenarios, one, reading through them a couple times, asking questions. I think the beauty of having your Discord, there's a huge online group to go, hey, I don't understand how to set this up, right? And somebody's probably got a template or a picture sitting somewhere of them setting it up. Or how do I maybe kind of close this out, right? I don't quite understand how to capture an objective. What's that about? Why is it so important, right? It's only 1 point. That's not really that big of a deal. And then you realize, no, if we don't maybe do a lot of this is the way the game's going to end. So scenarios are a beautiful way to stress test yourself. And down here in Kansas City, the reason I actually created one of our seasons, I wanted to play through a bunch of scenarios I've never played through.
Okay, yeah.
And so I just threw them all in there and said, I'm going to learn these scenarios for myself. So when I see other iterations of them, I know the basics.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think I'd even revise what I just said earlier. I said a third basics, third your army, third the enemy. We got to go quarters now, Brit.
Yep.
And I'm willing to break it down further if we can come up with additional topic. So quarter,
we'll probably be down to 1%. But
yeah, 100. Yeah. So quarter Saga basics, quarter your army, quarter the enemy, and a quarter the scenario. And if you played a scenario 10 times, your army 10 times, and the basics, you can be sitting pretty good, even if you're up against an unfamiliar opponent. So, yeah, the scenarios, there's a lot of scenarios out there. There's the Book of Battles stuff. I think those are good. Fundamentals, jumping in those. Looking at the different tournament packets, I would, especially if you are playing a lot of Clash, I don't know, I would say probably no more than one. I'm just going to pull this out of my butt. But if you're playing Clash more than a third of the time, I would say mix it up. Look for additional scenarios. If you're at events and stuff, Clash isn't played more than a third of the time. Yeah. It's probably, you're going to play it once out of 3 games. Now, a lot of times the special scoring and stuff can neuter a scenario down, so it's essentially a Clash, and I think there's probably a benefit to kind of knowing that mentally. I get 1 point per turn for doing this, but it might be better just to play my game, play it as if it was Clash, ignore the hill or whatever, kill the enemy, and come out that way. So kind of understanding the dynamics of the scenarios, I think, is pretty big, and how much you can ignore the special scoring, or how much, I think some scenario, it could be just the objectives, and the massacre and survival don't matter at all. So that would make a big difference to your gameplay. So yeah, sounds like having leagues and stuff, trying to lean into those scenarios. Definitely the Book of Battles and the classics, feasting and pillaging. I think Ambush is always really good. But yeah, check those out. Moving on, is there anything we haven't hit yet that you'd want to bring up?
So one of the things, this is where I always say, or I would say kind of the next step is really at that point is as you go through these, and this is maybe kind of for newer players and for myself, is remember to have, I hate to say it, and I know it's very cliche, but it's remember to have fun, right? That at the end of the day, I really enjoy Saga. And as a newer player, it can get really tough, right? Like I said, I started down here in Kansas City, man, and like I said, like my good friend, like somebody that's gone to World, Saga World and won World Cup with the U.S. team. We, like multiple like champions. They've won tons of tournaments. And so me being brand new walking into that, really being okay with getting in there and losing. That's probably honestly what helped me the most was that shift in that mindset for a new player is just be okay with like losing. I'm here to have fun. I'm here to talk with some friends. It'll show up, right? Eventually I will get to that point where I know the rules. I know them basic enough. I know my warband, but I'm also here to have fun. And if like you lose, that's okay. It's not like the end of the world to lose 4, 5, 6 games. Because I'm honestly, I'm here to have fun. And that can be really, really hard sometimes when I go on a losing streak as a new player.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely need to have the right mindset. And yeah, it'll come, make that victory all the sweeter, right? I will say that there's not that many dice rolled in the game of Saga compared to a lot of, maybe if we're going to look at Warhammer and stuff. So there's especially when Hearthguard are involved or the War, there's a lot riding on a few dice. So you can definitely win a Saga game through luck. And eventually, you can do it. You can, if you don't think you're getting better, you can still get lucky sometimes, and you get that win. Maybe that is how you get the first win, is just through pure luck.
It's probably, I would say, like my first, I always say like my first win on merit at the end of the day really was, I had some really good dice that showed up for me. But that's part of the game too, is living through that, right? That some days I have good dice, some days you're going to have the worst dice in the world, right? You can't stop rolling ones.
Yeah. And it's actually important for veteran players to have that mindset too, because they're on the flip side. And, I've done everything right. You're Picard. I've done everything right, but I still lose, you'll have that to happen to you. So, just kind of dealing with it. And yeah, we have a local guy, Zach. Might have seen him in different battle reports or videos popping up. But the first time he beat me, I think there was some luck involved. I will admit, but that really made it for him. And going down to the hobby shop, as soon as I walked, everybody else knew already because he had already come down, and was boasting of his victory. So, definitely enjoy it when you do get those wins over a talented opponent. All right, so. I don't know. I think we hit everything on the bullet points. Are we missing anything that you can see?
No, I mean, like I said, that's where I think of like a lot of the stuff we've talked about is just kind of keep putting reps in, keep asking questions, keep looking at the rule books, try the weird stuff. Because the weird stuff is fun too. I will say that there is the dumbest move in the world, send cavalry into a ruins, but I killed like 4 warriors, and well, I'll take it. It was fun. So
depending on the faction, what's happening, definitely they're not going to expect it. So you will surprise the opponent pulling off such a maneuver such as that. So give it a shot, give it a try.
Yep.
All right. Well, awesome. So this kind of discussion that we've just had is basically the kind of discussions that you've been having on Strategicon. So if you've enjoyed listening to us, definitely head on over there. I'll have a link in the video description. And yeah, man, it's been good chatting with you here. It's been an interesting topic for sure. Nice change of pace from the faction review. So yeah, are you going to be at Adepticon this year? Is it planned already or?
It is. I would say it's on the big radar. So I've already got the approval from the wife to skip out of town for like 5 days to get up there. So I am excited. Now I have more warbands, so I can do some more wild stuff. So
so awesome. Yeah, well, I'll definitely see you there, if not before, perhaps at Fimbulwinter. But I want to take a moment right now just to thank Cherry, Patrick, Sean, Mitchell, Kevin, Scott, the Saga Thursday patrons, and Brit, you're in there too, buddy. Thanks for being a patron, my man.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. Wouldn't be able to do these additional videos like we do, so much appreciated. Definitely, folks, comment below if you thought what we were jabbering on about was helpful. And if you're on your Saga journey and there's something that you found was particularly helpful, a trip mindset issue, something like that, definitely post below. How long does it take to get good at Saga, Brit? Your journey's over. You're good. You're good now, right?
I wish I could say that as somebody who's still. I'm happy to be mid-pack in Kansas City, so I am happy with that. But I would say a couple years, depending on who your group of guys is. And I don't know if I'll ever. I might have to. I might have to eliminate some people outside of the war game to be the top in Kansas City. So
okay.
that's
all right. Maybe some hired men for purposes here, doing something or other. Awesome. Yep. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's mostly about mindset, just being willing to get yourself out there, just have fun, just try new things, try new factions, scenarios, and just do it. Just get the games in, right?
Yep.
All right.
Get out there and play. That's the fun part.
Sounds good. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. We will catch you guys on the next one, and hopefully we'll have you back sometime to chat some more about Saga.
Be happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. See you, folks. Bye-bye.
Saga! If you'd like to see more Saga content, consider joining the Heathen Army over on Patreon or popping on down to the Saga Thursday Discord server. Links below. Thanks, guys.